days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. The San Francisco 49ers are forced to make some roster moves. Didn't take long. And of course, we know that they had just signed Equanimeous St. Brown, which that name's going to give me problems the entire time he's with the team. But St. Brown comes over. He signs for the first day of training camp. And then before you can even blink an eye, Jacob Cowing gets hurt, injures his hamstring in the first day of practice. And the 49ers are going to have to make another roster move, which they have now done. And there is a trickle-down effect. There's a domino effect from these moves having to happen, but you can't allow a position group to completely fall under a circumstance where they're going to be overtaxed with reps. And wide receiver is the toughest position for the 49ers or for any NFL team to make sure they have the reps to distribute amongst all the players. Everyone's going to get an opportunity because you have Brandon Ayuk on the PUP list. You have Ricky Pearsall on the PUP list. Those two guys are not available, and now Jacob Cowing is not going to be available. Whenever you suffer a string of injuries at one position, it makes things difficult. So the 49ers knew they needed to bring in a wide receiver, and they have done so. The San Francisco 49ers have brought in somebody they worked out. When they worked out St. Brown, Quinten Cephus, he's going to be wearing number 6. And so he's coming in. He's practicing today for the San Francisco 49ers. He's out there on the field. And so Cephus is going to be coming in because of Jacob Cowing's hamstring injury. And I think it's shining a glaring light on the fact that the 49ers got a need at wide receiver. Now, what they've done so far is elect to continue to add depth pieces. Now, Quinten Cephus, we're going to go through who he is and what he adds to this football team, because it's not like he's a guy that can't produce in the NFL, because he can. But I also don't believe that Cephus or St. Brown are coming in to become starters for this 49ers football team. But when you look at the roster, they need some guys to step up. Jacob Cowing, for the first 3 games, could have been wide receiver 3. And so now it's starting to get into where it's not just back of the roster depth, but the frontline starters are struggling. You're struggling to get those guys out there as well. Now, I don't think it's all bad. I think that Ricky Pearsall coming back for the start of Block 2 is going to stabilize the receiver room, especially with him and Jawan Jennings, because when you have those two guys, whenever you're in 12 personnel, 21 personnel, whenever you have these heavy sets, you have enough wide receivers. 2 wide receivers are going to be on the field, and you have 2 starting caliber wide receivers for sure at the top. After that, it becomes a little bit of a crapshoot. Now you've got to play guys who have at least been in the NFL. That's what's nice about having guys like Russell Gage, a guy like Isaiah Hodgins, even Quinten Cephus or St. Brown, is you've got guys who have already done it in the NFL. You don't have to count completely on young guys like Jordan Watkins or Isaiah Nair or Tariq Owens. And so 49ers might have to address wide receiver in a bigger manner if they suffer another injury or if Ricky Pearsall has a setback. And that would be pretty bad for the 49ers. I don't think it's catastrophic yet. I don't want to paint that picture. I'm not mad at Jacob Cowing for getting hurt. It's just something that happens with football. Everyone's trying to be the most jacked, the most quick twitched, and muscle sometimes can't handle all the work you're putting into it. So sometimes this happens, especially as they're looking to manage their body. But the 49ers had to release a player to make room for Cephus, because we know that when you go on the PUP list or the NFI, it doesn't create a roster spot on your 90-man roster. So they did have to release someone. I'll tell you who that is right after this. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on an audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you are going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online continues to be your number one source for all your sports betting action. And with baseball season in full swing and football season around the corner, Bet Online has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting. From MLB, UFC to tennis and NFL futures, BetOnline remains your choice for sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Head to the website today and take advantage of their industry-leading VIP program with level-up bonuses and weekly cash boosts. BetOnline, the game starts here. So to make room on the roster for Quinten Cephus, the San Francisco 49ers had to release a player, and they decided to release running back Israel Abanikanda. And I have been a supporter of Abanikanda, so this one kind of hurts. This one kind of cuts deep, but the 49ers now will have less running backs in the room, and so they're counting on Garendo, who's going to get a lion's share of the carries early with them working in McCaffrey. That means Garendo's going to be getting a lot of reps. Jordan James after him. Patrick Taylor and Corey Kiner. So 49ers making a decision here. It doesn't mean Abanikanda won't come back. It doesn't mean they won't eventually sign a different running back. Maybe they will, but they've had to step away from Abanikanda, who they picked up last year on waivers from the New York Jets. So his chances of making this team are not high. The fact that they had to release him. So we'll see what ultimately happens, but this is that cause and effect of having injuries at certain positions. Now you have to cut somebody somewhere else. And so you're trying to manage the reps, and they cut at a position where you're going to have McCaffrey not getting that many reps too. So now you've got to not overtax Isaac Garendo, Jordan James, Patrick Taylor, or Corey Kiner along the way as well. So it's an interesting dynamic for the 49ers, and they've only been through, 1.5 practices. So it's something that they're going to have to figure out. But Cephus comes in, and I said we would talk about Cephus because I do think it's important to figure out who this guy is, because I don't think that when you add players, ultimately it's like a foregone conclusion that they're not going to make the team or they're going to make the team. There's a term that people like to call a camp body. But I think there's always an opportunity for somebody to come in and impress. If they come in and get an opportunity, it doesn't mean they're going to be a starter. Doesn't mean they're going to make an impact on your team when you get to week 1 in Seattle. But they could end up displacing somebody else as a depth piece. You never want to count anyone out because it is a meritocracy. And you do have an opportunity to beat out guys who are already on your football team if you're better. So Quinten Cephus is 6'1", 202 pounds. He was a 5th-round pick in the 2020 NFL draft by the Detroit Lions. He ran a 4.73, so not a blazer at all. But his 10-yard split was 1.59, which means he's got that acceleration. He's able to do that. He plays pretty strong as well. He had 23 reps of bench press, and he really had a pretty good first year when he played for the Detroit Lions. His rookie year, he played in 13 games. He started 2 of those games. He had 20 catches for 349 yards, 2 touchdowns, which was impressive. And, his yards per reception were 17.5. He was a guy that was making plays down the field. And so Quinten Cephus was looked at as a eventual star for the Detroit Lions. He came in, made an impact early on. Now, since then, it hasn't went well. Quinten Cephus has dealt with injuries, hasn't been able to get on the field. And because of that, he really hasn't made an impact over his career. In fact, he hasn't even been doing anything in the NFL over the last couple of years. His last meaningful snaps came in 2022 for the Detroit Lions. And in that year, he only played 4 games. So 2021, he played 5 games. 2022, he played 4 games. So this is a reclamation project for the 49ers. It could be a camp body, as some people like to say, but a guy that has to come in and get some of those snaps. He's got to earn an opportunity. And there's plenty of people that have really liked Quinten Cephus and what he's provided, and a lot of it is because of what he did in that 2020 season. He was only targeted 35 times, but had 20 catches on those targets. That's a guy who's making plays and making the most of his opportunities, and that's ultimately what you're looking for with a wide receiver that's going to come in and fulfill depth and potentially, have a shot to make the back into your roster. So what does the 49ers wide receiver room look like currently? Well, that has been a little bit of a question mark for the Niners because, it has been tough. Of course, on top, Brandon Ayuk is going to be dealing with an injury, and that is difficult to deal with because, injuries come around here and there for the 49ers. but ultimately they've got to figure out who's going to be on this team. So Brandon Ayuk's dealing with the pup injury. That's going to be highly difficult for this 49ers football team, for him to be able to deal with that sort of injury. And he's not going to come back until middle part of the season, which we need, the other guys, Jawan Jennings, those guys to be able to step in and make some plays for the San Francisco 49ers football team. But at the top, you have a lot of injuries. You just go to a depth chart and you start looking at it and you see a lot of red, and red means, hey, these guys are injured. Brandon Ayuk is on top. He's dealing with injury. Ricky Pearsall, he's dealing with an injury. Now, it looks like Pearsall, from what he was doing at camp, was running on a side field. He's running top speed when needed. He's going to be back sooner rather than later. So that's good news. Jennings is out there and healthy, which is great news. Cowing now going to be on the shelf for a while. So, there's basically one of your top 4 receivers that are available. Now, Demarcus Robinson is still going to be going through practice. He's still going to be doing his thing. Jordan Watkins as well. Then after that, it's kind of the young guys, Nair, Bergen, Tariq Owens, Malik Knowles, and then the 2 veterans, Russell Gage, Isaiah Hodgins, and you got St. Brown, and now Quinten Cephus. So they've added more veterans with Cephus and St. Brown to a wide receiver room that became extremely young with some of the injuries, right? You had Watkins, who's a rookie, Isaiah Nair, a rookie, Junior Bergen, a rookie, Tariq Owens, not a rookie, but he's only been in the league for 1 year, spent most of the time on the practice squad, and Malik Knowles, the same sort of situation. So 49ers are definitely hurting a little bit when it comes to the wide receiver position, and they're going to have to figure it out. But day 1 of training camp overall was a success for the 49ers, minus the Jacob Cowing injury, which, we're kind of dealing with right now. But, we got some guys getting out there and getting some things done. Every single player that wasn't on the PUP list or the NFI was at practice. So that is good news. And I know that the Jacob Cowing injury is going to hover over the situation. And he's a guy that, everyone wanted to see big things from. Kyle Shanahan even said he had a heck of an OTAs and minicamp, and they're looking forward to when he comes back. Now, this could be a huge setback, depending on how bad the pull is. Kyle Shanahan said it's a pull. Depending on what grade it is, he could be out weeks, he could be out months. So it's a reminder that people have to step up, and injuries are a part of the game, and this is kind of what happens. So right now, the 49ers are doing everything in helmets and jerseys, and shorts. They're not going to be in pads until Monday, and so until then, it's going to be hard to evaluate some of the offensive linemen, some of the defensive linemen. They're mainly going through drills, but there's not a lot of contact. And so right now it's all about footwork. It's all about handwork. It's all about technique. And that's what they're doing out there. But guys were getting in some work. Ben Barch, who now it's been revealed is dealing with a quad injury that he suffered working away from the team, had a really good workout on the side field with a member of the training staff. So that's good news. Whenever you have a muscle injury like that and you're working pretty hard and not just out there doing some light jogging and walking, they're trying to work on re-strengthening and then also getting you reacclimated and getting you in shape so you don't go out there and push it and force it. And that's the same thing that was going on with Ricky Pearsall. He is close to coming back from the hamstring issue, and Kyle Shanahan said he wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't, make it out there on Sunday, which is the first part of block 2, which could be a huge addition. And he did say in years past that Ricky Pearsall, Andre Dillard, those guys probably would have already been out there, but they're taking their time and they're trying to be more cautious and making sure they have everyone ready. So it's good news. Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, and Nick Bosa, they only did individual drills, which is nothing new, especially for Trent Williams and Nick Bosa. It's not uncommon for them to not go through team drills. And they're going to be hit and miss with team drills. They'll do it sometimes. I expect for Trent Williams and McCaffrey to be even more sparingly than Bosa, because it's not important for them to go through those things. These guys are experienced veterans. They understand what they're supposed to do with their reps, and you just trying to keep them fresh. And this is part of the management of these players, and try to make sure when you get to the end of the preseason and you're ready for Seattle week 1, that Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, and Nick Bosa are ready to go. The fun thing was Mikael Williams was shadowing Nick Bosa. And, I've talked about this on the channel a lot. You watch a rep, you do a rep. And Mikael Williams was watching Nick Bosa and then doing a rep behind him. And is there any better way for a young player to get ready for an NFL season than to mirror and watch what Nick Bosa does? And, of course, when we got to team, it was Mikael Williams out there with the first team at defensive end, and it was Sam Okuwanu. And, of course, Itor Gross-Matos is not out there right now. He's also another one expected to be ready for block 2 and get out there at some point. So when that happens, what will happen to Okuwanu? Will Okuwanu slip a little bit right back down to that competition with Robert Beal? But it appears right now through the early part of training camp that they've got Okuwanu slightly ahead of Robert Beal Jr. We'll see what happens when it comes to that position. So kind of interesting, with those veterans. And we talked about this. I actually put a thing out on Patreon. We're talking about 5 storylines, and one of them was managing the veterans. And I mentioned McCaffrey, Williams, and Bosa, but I also think they need to manage George Kittle as well. Kittle was out there making plays, making big-time catches, during practice from Brock Purdy, looking like, the George Kittle that we all know and love. So I do think that you're going to hear about George Kittle being out from some of the practices, some of the team stuff as well, as they look to monitor and keep a guy who's over 30 years old healthy, because they know they're going to need him for the season. To open team drills, Spencer Burford was at left tackle for Trent Williams. Not a shock, especially with Andre Dillard injured. This is Spencer Burford stepping right into the Jalen Moore role. Jalen Moore played left tackle extensively at training camp over the last 3 seasons, and he never had an opportunity. And Chris Foerster even said, I feel bad for Jalen because he never had an opportunity to compete for one of the guard spots or to compete at right tackle because they felt so comfortable with him playing at left tackle. Now Spencer Burford's walking into a situation where he's the new Jalen Moore. He's a guy that's going to get all those reps when Trent's not playing. Now, that's great for a young guy to get all these reps, but it does also prevent him from being in a situation to potentially start for left guard. Now, Kyle Shanahan did say, hey, they know Spencer Burford can get it done. So if Burford needs to step in place of Bart or Zakel, he can do that. So Burford right now is getting all those reps. I do believe that when Andre Dillard is activated from the PUP list, that he will start working in at left and right tackle. And I think that they are looking for a swing tackle. Now, Burford's probably going to get most of the reps at left tackle, but I do believe Dillard's going to get him as well as they try to figure out which tackles to keep between Burford, Dillard, and Austin Pleasance, who has been a local media darling over these offseason workouts about his quickness, his speed, his athleticism that he's been putting on display. I think he's more plugged into right tackle right now, but we'll go ahead and see how that works. But you had Spencer Burford at left tackle. You had Nick Zakel at left guard, which doesn't shock us with Ben Barch being out. Jake Brendel was at center. Pooney at right guard. Colton McKivitz at right tackle. No surprises there when you're talking about alignment. Now, we talked about Mikael Williams and Sam Okuwanu, playing defensive end with that first unit with Bosa being out. And your defensive tackles were Kevin Givens and Jordan Elliott. And, of course, not a surprise again, because you do start with the veterans, and those young guys have to earn those roles. You don't just put them into the starting lineup. You make them go out there and earn it. And the veterans have a better grasp of the defensive scheme, the expectations, and the same way Mikael Williams was watching Nick Bosa, you watch a rep, you do a rep. So you get an opportunity for younger guys to watch these veterans go do it, and then you get to go do it. And then your option is go do it better. And that's what you're trying to do, is then when you see it, you develop your own idea of how you're going to handle it, and you go out there and you execute at a higher level. And so that's what they're working on right now. I do believe that at some point, Alfred Collins will overtake Kevin Givens as a starting defensive tackle, and Jordan Elliott and Alfred Collins will start at D tackle. I've been saying that the whole time. I think Kevin Givens still has a shot to make this team because of his pass rush ability. Now at linebacker, I wouldn't call it a surprise, but rolling with the first unit, you had Fred Warner and D Winters, which is not shocking at all. Winters, in fact, had a very good practice opening it up at training camp, which is great news. He intercepted Brock Purdy, made a great read, undercut a slant route, and took it to the house. D. Winters has that ability. He has big play potential, and if there was one thing that he excelled at last year, it was coverage, right? Over a 70 PFF grade in coverage. So you've got a guy that can really make some plays out on the open field and in coverage. That's not the question mark. The question mark's going to be Monday and beyond when they start kicking the tires on running the football and you can have contact. Is D. Winters going to be able to step up and make the plays? And of course, they don't tackle to the ground, but it's just about being in the right spots at the right time and making the play. And so this is going to be a very important time. But then the 49ers' new linebacker, Luke Gifford, was taking the opening snaps as Sam linebacker. So we've talked about Gifford as a guy that, could potentially be in the mix. I've said I believe that it's Nick Martin or Tatum Bethune, but I did believe from the beginning that Martin would play will linebacker behind D. Winters. Number one, if something happens and D gets injured, you need Nick Martin up to speed, and that's been one of D. Winters' biggest bugaboos, has been injuries. So having Nick Martin watch a rep, do a rep behind him, especially for the first part of training camp when they're doing install and putting in the defense, is very important. But at some point, you can move him to Sam linebacker. Responsibilities aren't that much different, and so it'll be an easy transition. We've seen the 49ers do this before. In fact, last year, D. Winters was a backup will linebacker working behind Devondre Campbell, and then when the season started, he became the starting Sam linebacker. So this is something that definitely happens, and I expect the same sort of thing to happen. But Luke Gifford has proven that he has the ability, and the 49ers are going to be looking for a really good run stopper at the Sam linebacker spot. Gifford, Bethune, Martin, even Chaz Surratt, all involved in this competition. Now, the starting cornerbacks, Lenore, Renardo Green, not a surprise. Trey Brown was the opening nickel, and we have kind of, once John Lynch said that to the media, that was kind of the thought process. Upton Stout getting the reps behind him, and Upton Stout almost had a big interception at training camp. So you've got Trey Brown, once again, a veteran ahead. Rookie's got to go earn it. So right now, they like that versatility with Trey Brown, and he's going to get that look. And, of course, De'Amon Lenore, Renardo Green. Now, Kyle Shanahan kind of opened the door for De'Amon Lenore to move back inside if that is what is needed, if they don't have a guy that steps up, and maybe they have a guy on the outside that can play, at a more consistent level than Trey Brown or Upton Stout on the inside, that they would be willing to do that. So opening the door again for De'Amon Lenore to play inside, even though he said they would rather have him play outside. Now, your starting safeties, no surprise here. Jason Pennick and Jair Brown, they're getting the first reps. Now, it's not a done deal, right? This is just the first day, but I expected that to be the opening day. You got Jason Pennick, who Robert Saleh is very confident in, who understands the defense from being drafted by Robert Saleh. So that's number one. Then you have Jair Brown, who the 49ers have invested in. They were going to give him the first shot. And so a guy like Richie Grant, Marquis Siegel, those guys are going to have to go out there and prove that they can overtake the guys in front of them. Now, with Marquis Siegel, this is a great opportunity for him to watch, for him to learn, and for him to go ahead and continue to try to develop into a player that can go out there and make some plays. So it is going to be interesting to see what happens with this secondary, especially with Upton Stout and with Marquis Siegel throughout the time in training camp. But, hey, this is exactly what you want from the very first part of practice. And, of course, when they got to 11-11s, Brock Purdy was out there making some really good plays and some good throws, getting the ball to George Kittle for a big play. We had other guys making plays. Jason Pennick had an interception. We know D. Winters had an interception. And so, Brock Purdy had a good day overall. This is what you expect. You expect him to force plays in there and throws in there and see what he can get away with, see what his playmakers can do. So don't get too caught up on what happens when it comes to interceptions, but do look at the defensive players and say, hey, way to make a play. If the ball comes to you, you have to make a play. Now, the one thing noticeable from everything that it was going on at training camp is the size of Alfred Collins. Alfred Collins is healthy. He's moving well, and the guy's an absolute monster. 6'5", 332 pounds. The 49ers not just added talented players, but added large mass and guys that can go in there and making some real plays. So it's exciting to see now. Mikael Williams is working with the first team right now. Alfred Collins with the second team. I kind of look for Alfred Collins once we get into pads to start making his move. And I'm kind of thinking that by the time we get to the second preseason game against the Raiders, there's a good chance Alfred Collins is getting some starting reps because they want to see how he will play up front. And it's an opportunity for them to get him out on the field and find out what's going on. Now, Russell Gage has been making some plays, and we need one of these guys to step up. And I've talked about Russell Gage recently over the last couple of weeks that I felt that his game kind of fit with the 49ers, and maybe they would have an opportunity to get Russell Gage as one of those rookies that could, or not, one of those veterans that could help the rookies and ultimately help this football team while they're waiting for guys, to get going. And one funny note was Nick Bosa talking about the fact that it's kind of exciting that the 49ers have, a kicking situation going on, a kicking competition. And so it's been fun. Jake Moody and Greg Joseph all made all their field goals from 28, 33, 41, and 46. And so Jake Moody, like we've anticipated, is going to have good practices. And so this is what it's going to be. And, all throughout training camp, we're going to be monitoring exactly what happens with these guys. Now, the bad news is the 49ers have already dealt with an injury. They've already had to cut a running back to sign another wide receiver, right? This is not what they wanted to do. They've had to make roster moves to be able to fulfill their roster. That's not how you want to start training camp, but it's also not the end of the world either, right? The 49ers are still in a situation where they're not completely out of it yet. So it's exciting time for training camp. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think about these moves that the 49ers have made. Are you concerned about wide receiver? Are you concerned about running back? Let me know. And, of course, we're just going to keep talking about 49ers training camp. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.